The Great Pyramid of Giza aligns to the cardinal directions with near-perfect precision. This is not a coincidence, but a deliberate mathematical signature, a hidden code left behind by ancient architects. These mathematical codes are embedded in ancient temples across the globe, from the jungles of Cambodia to the deserts of Egypt, and by the end of this, you will see these stone wonders not as ruins, but as complex messages from the past. Why would ancient builders go to such incredible lengths to encode advanced mathematics into their holiest sites? And what lost knowledge might these patterns truly represent? What does it say about our own civilization that we are only now beginning to understand theirs? These alignments are the first and most visible layer of the hidden code. Picture a massive stone doorway, not simply facing east, but positioned to perfectly frame the sun as it crests the horizon on the longest day of the year. That precise moment of alignment is not an accident. It is a deliberate act of engineering, a permanent marker in stone that connects a specific day on the calendar to a specific point in the sky. This practice was universal. The great temple of Karnak in Egypt was aligned so the sun would travel down its entire central axis during the solstice. Across the ocean, the Sun Dagger site in Choco Canyon, New Mexico, uses a clever slit between rock slabs to project a dagger of light onto a spiral petroglyph, marking the summer solstice and equinoxes with stunning accuracy. Why was this so important to cultures separated by vast oceans and millennia? For them, the temple was a conduit. It was a place where heaven and earth met, where the divine order of the cosmos was mirrored in human construction. The correct alignment ensured that the prayers of the people, the cycles of planting and harvest, and the very rhythm of life were all in sync with the universe itself. So when we look at a temple's orientation, we are seeing more than an architectural plan. We are seeing a profound belief system carved into the landscape, a belief that mathematics and astronomy were the languages the gods used to write the laws of nature. This sacred foundation is precisely what allowed more complex mathematical ideas to be woven into the very fabric of these structures, hidden just beneath the surface of celestial observation. This precise alignment with the heavens was just the beginning, a gateway to a deeper mathematical language etched into the stone. One of the most profound and recurring symbols in this hidden code is the golden ratio, a number approximately equal to 1.618. It appears with such frequency in ancient temples that it cannot be dismissed as mere coincidence. Look at the Parthenon standing on the Acropolis in Athens. The proportions of its famous facade, the relationship between its width and height, closely adhere to this golden number. The result is a structure that feels instinctively balanced and harmonious, a quality that has resonated with observers for over 2,000 years. This was not an aesthetic accident. The same ratio can be found in the spacing of its columns and the layout of its floor plan, a consistent mathematical thread woven through the entire design. So why was this specific, irrational number so important to builders who worked with simple tools and immense ambition? Some researchers point to the world around us. The golden ratio appears in the spiral of a nautilus shell, the arrangement of seeds in a sunflower, and even the grand arms of spiral galaxies. It seems to be a fundamental ingredient in nature's recipe for beauty and growth. By incorporating this ratio into their holiest sites, ancient architects may have been attempting to replicate divine creation itself. The temple became more than a building. It became a microcosm of a perfectly ordered universe. This was mathematics as a philosophical statement, a way to physically bridge the gap between the human world and the transcendent. suggesting that the same rules governing the cosmos could be understood and built right here on Earth. And if this was their intention, the golden ratio was just one symbol in a much larger numerical lexicon. But the golden ratio was not the only mathematical secret these builders knew. Another number, one we all learn in school, appears in their work with startling consistency. Pi, the constant used for calculating circles, seems to have been embedded in structures millennia before its formal definition. The most famous example is again the Great Pyramid. If you take the perimeter of its square base and divide it by twice its original height, the result is a figure remarkably close to pi. For a structure built with such staggering precision, this cannot be a simple coincidence of measurement. It suggests the architects possessed a profound, if not formalized, understanding of the relationship between a circle's circumference and its diameter. This pattern extends beyond Egypt. Look at the magnificent Pantheon in Rome with its vast, unsupported dome. The interior is a perfect sphere, and its dimensions, the relationship between the dome's height and the cylindrical space below, resonate with pi. Even the Great Stone Circle of Stonehenge, where the circumference of the Sarsen circle relates to its diameter in a way that echoes this fundamental constant. So how did they do it? Did ancient priests and stonemasons possess textbooks of advanced geometry that have since turned to dust? The answer is likely more ingenious. They may have discovered pi through practical, hands-on experience. Imagine rolling a wheel one full revolution and measuring the distance it travels. That distance is pi times the wheel's diameter. Through such simple, repetitive actions, the value of pi would reveal itself naturally to any culture that built carts or made pottery. But why encode this knowledge in a temple? Pi is the number of the circle, and the circle is a universal symbol of cycles, of eternity, of the infinite. The sun is a circle, the moon cycles through its phases, the seasons repeat in an endless loop. By weaving pi into the fabric of their most sacred sites, these cultures were building a monument to the cyclical nature of time and the cosmos itself. The structure became a physical prayer, a declaration that they understood the mathematical heartbeat of the universe. This repeated appearance of pi across continents and eras points to a shared, sophisticated grasp of geometry that forces us to reconsider the intellectual landscape of the ancient world. These geometric patterns reveal a third layer of the ancient code, one that moves beyond pure number into the realm of symbolic form. We find intricate mandalas in Buddhist temples, labyrinthine floors in medieval cathedrals, and complex yantras used in Hindu worship. These are far more than decoration. They are cosmic diagrams and spiritual maps rendered in stone and stained glass. Take the Sri Yantra, a revered diagram in Hindu tradition. It is composed of 9 interlocking triangles, precisely arranged according to strict mathematical rules. The angles, the intersections, the proportions, all are calculated to create a perfect geometric matrix. Devotees believe this specific configuration can manifest divine energy and aid in meditation, acting as a visual and mathematical bridge to higher consciousness. This was not art for art's sake, it was technology for the soul. Across the world, the great Gothic cathedrals of Europe tell a similar story through their breathtaking rose windows. These massive circular windows are filled with intricate stone tracery, forming patterns of radiating symmetry that are mathematically flawless. The number of petals, the divisions of the circle, the repeating sequences, all encoded theological concepts about divine order, the harmony of creation, and the nature of God. Why were circles, squares, and triangles considered so sacred across so many cultures? These shapes were seen as the fundamental building blocks of reality itself. the pure forms from which all chaotic nature was composed. A circle with no beginning and no end represented eternity and the infinite cosmos. A square symbolized the solid, stable earth. A triangle could point upward to the heavens or downward to the material world. By constructing their temples with these geometrically perfect forms, ancient builders were attempting to create a pocket of perfect order within a disordered world. They believed that by aligning a physical space with these primal shapes, they could facilitate a communion with the divine realms that operated by those same geometric laws. When we stand before a mandala or gaze up at a rose window, we are not just looking at a beautiful pattern. We are looking at a philosophical argument written in geometry, a bold statement that the universe is not random, but is built upon a foundation of mathematical truth and beautiful, intelligible design. This intricate dance of geometry and number finds one of its most spectacular expressions in the jungles of Cambodia. Angkor Wat, a sprawling 12th century temple complex, was engineered as a perfect reflection of the cosmos. Its primary axis is aligned with such precision that on the spring equinox, the rising sun crests the central tower in a breathtaking display, a moment of celestial alignment frozen in stone for nearly a millennium. But this solar event is merely the most visible layer of a far more complex system. The temple's corridors, pools, and gateways are positioned to track the movements of the moon and to frame key stars within the constellation of Draco. This was not just a place of prayer, it was a giant, stationary observatory and a sophisticated calendar, its very stones marking the passage of seasons and years. The entire layout is a geometric map of Hindu cosmology, with its concentric galleries symbolizing the chain of mythical mountains and oceans that surround the center of the universe. Here, mathematics was the sacred language used to unite earth and sky. The architects of Angkor Wat did not simply build a monument to their gods, they constructed a working model of their entire belief system, a place where the spiritual and the scientific were one and the same. This profound integration forces a compelling question. How did such disparate ancient cultures, from the deserts of Egypt to the jungles of Cambodia, all arrive at the same fundamental conclusion, that the universe could be understood through mathematics and mirrored in architecture? The answer may lie not in shared blueprints, but in a shared observation of the one thing they all had in common, the night sky. This same mathematical intuition appears halfway across the world, etched into the limestone of the Yucatan Peninsula. The Great Pyramid of Chichen Itza, known as El Castillo, is a masterpiece of encoded timekeeping. Each of its 4 sides has 91 steps, a number that seems deliberate on its own. But when you add them all together, you get 364. And with the final step being the platform at the top, the total becomes 365, the exact number of days in a solar year. This was a colossal calendar rendered in stone, a structure that marked the passage of time with every one of its steps, yet the mathematical secrets go even deeper. The ratios between the pyramid's dimensions, the proportions of its terraces and stairways, often correspond to perfect Pythagorean triples. These are sets of 3 whole numbers that perfectly satisfy the relationship a squared plus b squared equals c squared, like the classic 3-4-5 triangle. This is where the mystery intensifies. The Pythagorean theorem, as a formal geometric rule, would not be documented in Europe for more than 1,000 years after this pyramid was built. So how did the Maya architects incorporate these precise mathematical relationships into their design? One possibility is the power of independent discovery. Cultures working with ropes and stakes to lay out right angles for foundations could have stumbled upon these practical number sets through trial and error. A rope with 12 evenly spaced knots, when stretched into a triangle with sides of 3, 4, and 5 units, will always form a perfect right angle. This simple technique could have revealed the principle without any need for a formal theorem. Another, more tantalizing theory suggests a thread of lost knowledge, a shared source of architectural wisdom that somehow influenced cultures separated by vast oceans. Whether through independent genius or a forgotten connection, the presence of these specific triples in Mesoamerica is undeniable. It points to a global recurrence of the same mathematical principles, a pattern that suggests humanity was collectively tuning into the fundamental frequencies of geometry, building sacred sites that resonated with the same numerical harmony that structures our universe. Beyond the geometry of circles and triangles lies a deeper, more symbolic layer of the ancient code, one written entirely in number. The very counts of pillars, the tiers of towers, and the circuits of sacred paths were meticulously chosen, for numbers themselves were seen as sacred. They were not merely quantities, but vessels of profound spiritual meaning. In the ancient world, numerology was a core component of sacred architecture, a way to weave cosmological stories and divine attributes directly into the stone. Consider the number 7, a figure that echoed across cultures as a symbol of completeness and divine order. You can see it in the 7 ascending tiers of the great Mesopotamian ziggurats, each level representing a step closer to the heavens, a ladder connecting the human world to the realm of the gods. The same number appears in the 7 circuits of certain ancient labyrinthine temples, where a pilgrim's winding journey to the center was a symbolic passage through 7 stages of spiritual purification or 7 planetary spheres. This was not a random choice, it was a deliberate architectural sermon. Similarly, the number 12 held immense power, resonating with the 12 months of the year, the 12 signs of the zodiac, and the 12 hours of the day and night. Egyptian temple designers understood this perfectly, constructing grand halls supported by 12 colossal pillars. Each pillar was more than a structural support. It was a representation of a cosmic force, a physical embodiment of the complete and ordered cycle of time that governed both the heavens and the earth. Walking through such a hall was to move through a manifest timeline, surrounded by the pillars of the months and the constellations. Why go to such length? Because for these builders, numbers were the alphabet of a hidden language. An abstract concept like divine perfection or the harmony of the celestial spheres is difficult to carve into a block of granite. But by encoding it as the number 7 or 12, they could make that intangible idea tangible. The number became a carrier of sacred meaning, a symbolic shortcut that transformed a physical space into a theological statement. This numerological layer reminds us that their mathematics was never just about measurement and engineering. It was a philosophical and spiritual tool, a way to express the inexpressible and to build a bridge between the finite world of form and the infinite realm of spirit. When we count the tiers of a ziggurat or the pillars of a hall, we are not just tallying architectural features. We are reading a forgotten creed, one that believed the universe itself was built from numbers, and that by building with those same numbers, humanity could participate in the divine order. These patterns of sacred numbers and geometry point toward an even grander possibility. What if the ancient code was not confined to individual temples, but was written across the entire surface of the earth itself? Some researchers propose exactly that, suggesting that certain iconic sites are positioned according to geodetic principles, a form of alignment based on the planet's own geography. This is the realm of ley lines and world grids, a controversial but captivating idea. Theorists point out that sites like Stonehenge, the Great Pyramid, and Machu Picchu appear to fall along astonishingly straight lines that span entire continents. On a map, the straight line distance from the Great Pyramid to the ancient site of Machu Picchu is a specific figure. The straight line distance from the Great Pyramid to the mysterious statues of Easter Island is another specific figure. The ratio between these two vast distances is pi exactly. The sheer scale of such alignments is difficult to comprehend. Could these placements be random, or do they hint at a lost global surveying system of incredible sophistication? The suggestion is that these ancient cultures possessed advanced knowledge of geodesy, the science of measuring the Earth. This would mean they understood our planet not as a flat plane, but as a sphere, and could accurately calculate distances and angles across its curved surface. If true, they may have been encoding fundamental information about the planet's dimensions, its magnetic fields, or even its position in the solar system directly into the location of their most sacred monuments. The evidence, however, is hotly debated. Skeptics argue that with so many ancient sites scattered across the globe, finding a few that align by pure chance is statistically inevitable. They point out that drawing lines on a spherical planet using modern map projections can create illusions of straight lines that did not exist for the original builders. Furthermore, there is no definitive archaeological evidence, like shared artifacts or written records, to prove that the builders of Stonehenge were in communication with the architects of the Great Pyramid. So where does that leave us? The geometric relationships between these distant sites remain a profound mystery. Whether through a coordinated, prehistoric effort or a series of independent, intuitive acts, the result is the same. We are left with a planet dotted with sacred sites that seem to speak to one another across thousands of miles. This perspective forces us to expand our view from individual temples to a potential worldwide network. It hints at a forgotten chapter in human history, a time of knowledge exchange or a shared spiritual understanding of the Earth that remains largely unaccounted for. Were these temples nodes in a planetary energy grid, or simply the highest achievements of cultures that independently discovered the same mathematical truths? The stones themselves hold the answer, and we are only just beginning to learn how to ask the right questions. This same reverence for nature's own mathematics finds exquisite expression in the spirals and petals carved into sacred stone. In the intricate sculptures adorning ancient Indian temples, you will find lotus flowers with a very specific number of petals. They are not random. You might count 5 or 8 or 13 petals, a sequence of numbers that feels instinctively balanced. This is the Fibonacci sequence in action, a pattern where each number is the sum of the two before it, unfolding as 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, and so on. Look closely at the spiraling curls of a deity's hair or the unfolding pattern of a stone flower, and you will often find these same numbers governing the design. Why would an artist working with a hammer and chisel adhere to such a specific numerical pattern? The answer lies not in a mathematical textbook, but in a field of sunflowers. This very same sequence dictates the arrangement of seeds in a sunflower's head. It governs the spiral of a nautilus shell and the branching of trees. The Fibonacci sequence is, in essence, nature's favorite recipe for growth. By weaving this pattern into their art, the temple sculptors were doing something profound. They were not merely decorating a wall, they were replicating the very blueprint of life itself. The lotus flower, a sacred symbol of purity and creation, was not just carved to look like a lotus. It was carved to grow like one, following the same mathematical law that the living plant obeys. This transformed the temple from a static structure into a dynamic celebration of creation. It blurred the line between the built environment and the living world, suggesting that the divine was not separate from nature, but was present in its most fundamental patterns. The temple became an organic extension of the cosmos, its art pulsating with the same rhythmic, generative mathematics that brings a forest to life. This was more than art, it was a philosophical statement carved in stone, a declaration that the same intelligence that designed the spiral galaxy also designed the spiral in a snail's shell and should therefore be mirrored in the house of the gods. This practical application of mathematics transformed these structures into something far greater than places of worship. They became colossal calendars in stone, their alignments marking the solstices, equinoxes, and lunar phases with unerring accuracy. In the rolling green hills of Ireland, the massive Neolithic tomb of Newgrange predates Stonehenge and the Great Pyramid. Its most stunning feature is a narrow opening above the entrance known as a roof box. For just a few minutes on the dawn of the winter solstice, a single, narrow beam of sunlight travels up the long, dark passageway and dramatically illuminates the inner burial chamber. This event was not for the living but for the dead, a symbolic rebirth of the sun at the year's darkest point, engineered with incredible precision over 5,000 years ago. Across the Atlantic, the Maya built the Observatory of El Caracol at Chichen Itza. This unique, round tower features narrow slits that function as windows, precisely aligned to the most extreme rising and setting points of the planet Venus. The Maya did not see Venus as a simple morning star, they revered it as a powerful war deity. Tracking its complex 584-day cycle was a matter of both spiritual and state security, allowing them to anticipate celestial events they believed influenced the fate of kings and empires. The creation of these alignments demanded generations of meticulous astronomical observation. It required a deep understanding of cycles that span years, even decades. The builders had to perform complex mathematical calculations to translate these celestial motions into fixed architectural forms, ensuring that a beam of light would hit its mark not just in their own time, but for centuries to come. This was mathematics in service of society. The temple as calendar dictated the optimal time for planting and harvest. It set the dates for religious festivals and royal coronations, and it organized the entire rhythm of civic life. The seamless integration of scientific observation into spiritual practice reveals a worldview where the cosmos was not a chaotic mystery. It was an orderly, predictable system, a divine mechanism governed by mathematical laws. By encoding these patterns into their architecture, these cultures demonstrated their belief that they could not only understand this cosmic order, but physically participate in it, anchoring the sacred rhythms of the heavens firmly into the earthly realm. These long-term celestial rhythms were not limited to the sun and moon. A deeper, more complex layer of the code involves the slow, stately dance of the planets themselves. The magnificent Borobudur Temple in Indonesia, a vast Buddhist monument shaped like a cosmic mandala, may hold such a secret in its very proportions. Some researchers analyzing its structure have found that the ratios between its different terraces and the overall dimensions of the monument correspond remarkably well to the synodic periods of Mercury, Venus, and Earth. A synodic period is the time it takes for a planet, as seen from Earth, to return to the same position relative to the Sun, like from one sunrise appearance to the next. To encode these planetary cycles into stone, the builders needed more than just casual observation. They required generations of precise data tracking the planets as they looped and wandered against the backdrop of fixed stars. This does not necessarily mean they believed the Sun was the center of the solar system in the way Copernicus would later argue, but it does reveal a sophisticated, data-driven understanding of planetary patterns, a kind of practical heliocentrism observed from our moving Earth. They were mapping the results of a heliocentric reality long before they had the theoretical model to explain it. The same impulse to record cosmic time is found along the Nile. Certain Egyptian temples feature long, processional corridors whose precise lengths are believed to correspond to the cyclical movements of specific stars. The star Sirius was of paramount importance. Its first pre-dawn reappearance in the eastern sky, known as its heliacal rising, heralded the imminent, life-giving flooding of the Nile. By building a corridor whose length symbolically matched the annual cycle of Sirius, the temple became a permanent predictor of this vital event. It fused the celestial trigger with the terrestrial outcome in an unbreakable architectural bond. Encoding these multi-year planetary and stellar cycles demanded more than just astronomy. It required advanced computational skill. The priests or astronomer mathematicians responsible were performing complex calculations to convert observed time into fixed spatial dimensions. They were translating the invisible flow of years into the tangible measure of cubits and stone blocks. This profound layer of celestial encoding reveals the ultimate ambition of these ancient architects. They were not merely building shelters for statues or congregations. They were constructing permanent, indestructible records of the heavens, anchoring their most sacred spaces to the very rhythms of the cosmos. The temple became a stone library of celestial motion, a sanctuary where the architecture itself whispered the timeless patterns of the stars. This mathematical harmony finds its most immediate and powerful expression in the principle of symmetry. A symmetrical temple facade feels instinctively balanced because it reflects a fundamental order found throughout nature, from the wings of a butterfly to the human face. But in sacred architecture, this balance was far more than a pleasing aesthetic. It was a deliberate philosophical statement carved in stone. Hindu temple design offers a profound example where a strict bilateral symmetry governs the entire structure. As you approach the main shrine, every element on the left is perfectly mirrored on the right, creating a powerful sense of equilibrium. This mirrored design is a direct physical representation of the philosophical concept of Dvanda, the pairs of opposites that define our existence, light and dark, male and female, earth and sky. The temple becomes a tool for transcending these dualities, guiding the worshipper down the central axis, the path of balance that leads toward a unified divine reality. This entire symphony of symmetry was not left to artistic intuition. It was meticulously calculated using geometric blueprints known as mandalas. These sacred diagrams, intricate grids of squares and circles, dictated the exact proportions and placement of every single element, from the foundation stones to the tip of the central spire. Every wall, every pillar, every statue had its ordained place within this mathematical matrix, ensuring the entire structure vibrated with a preordained harmony. A similar, though philosophically distinct, devotion to symmetry shaped the great temples of ancient Greece. The Parthenon's perfect reflective symmetry was an embodiment of the Greek ideal of logos, a universe governed by rational, mathematical laws. For them, beauty was not a subjective feeling, but an objective truth that could be expressed through precise geometry and balanced proportions. This symmetry created an environment that felt inherently rational and orderly, a small pocket of cosmic perfection here on Earth. So why did this specific mathematical concept resonate so deeply across cultures? The answer lies in its power to translate the abstract into the tangible. An idea like cosmic balance is difficult to grasp, but walking through a symmetrically perfect gateway makes you feel it. The architects were using mathematical precision to build an experience, crafting spaces that would actively guide a worshipper's mind away from chaos and toward inner equilibrium. The perfectly aligned pillars and mirrored halls were not just holding up the roof, they were holding up an idea, the idea that the universe itself is built on a foundation of beautiful, intelligible balance. This mathematical purity extends even to the abstract world of prime numbers. These are numbers like 3, 5, 7, and 13, unique figures divisible only by themselves and 1. While less obvious than the golden ratio or pi, these indivisible numbers sometimes appear in the sacred architecture of the world, hinting at a recognition of their special status. In the soaring Gothic cathedrals of medieval Europe, you might find a spire whose height in some unit of measure is a prime number, or a rose window with a count of petals based on a prime. Why would a master builder, already constrained by immense engineering challenges, concern himself with such a numerical detail? For the medieval mind, prime numbers represented a form of mathematical purity, an unbreakable whole. They could not be divided or reduced, much like the perceived unity and indivisibility of God. Using them in a sacred structure was a way to encode this fundamental, unyielding aspect of the divine right into the stonework. This same principle appears thousands of years earlier and thousands of miles away. In ancient Vedic traditions from India, the construction of fire altars was a profoundly precise science. The texts specify that these altars must be built with a specific number of bricks, and in key ritual altars, that number is a prime. Each prime-numbered brick was not just a building block, it was a component in a cosmic circuit, believed to enhance the efficacy of the ritual and ensure its connection to the spiritual realm. The very indivisibility of the prime number mirrored the desired indivisibility of the ritual's intention, a perfect, unbroken offering to the gods. What does this tell us? The inclusion of prime numbers suggests an appreciation for number theory that went far beyond the practical needs of measurement or alignment. It hints at an esoteric knowledge, a philosophical understanding that certain numbers held intrinsic power and meaning. These builders were not just using mathematics as a tool, they were exploring its very essence, recognizing primes as the fundamental atoms of the numerical universe. By embedding them in their holiest sites, they were making a bold statement about the nature of reality itself, that at the foundation of all things lies a world of unique, unbreakable, and sacred numerical laws. This modular logic transformed the temple from a mere building into a perfectly integrated mathematical system. The ancient Greeks perfected this idea with their architectural orders, particularly the Doric style. For them, the foundational unit was the diameter of the column's base. Every single dimension of the entire structure was then derived from this one module. The height of the column, the spacing between them, the proportions of the entablature above, all were calculated as precise multiples or fractions of that initial diameter. This was not a vague guideline, it was a rigid mathematical formula. The result was a building of profound visual harmony, where every part felt intrinsically connected to the whole. A small temple and a massive sanctuary could be built using the same proportional system, scaled up or down while preserving their perfect balance. This system meant an architect did not need a detailed, inch-by-inch blueprint for a project that might take decades. He needed only to establish the module, and the entire design unfolded from that single, repeatable number. This mathematical consistency created a universal language of form, a visual rhythm that anyone, anywhere in the Greek world, would instantly recognize as ordered and beautiful. This principle of modular design was a global phenomenon. In ancient India, master builders followed texts known as the Shilpa Shastras, elaborate manuals that prescribed the sacred proportions for a temple down to the smallest detail. The entire structure, from its foundational plinth to the tip of its soaring spire, was governed by a single unit of measurement, often derived from the patron's own body. This unit determined the size of every brick, the width of every doorway, and the height of every sculpted deity. The system was so comprehensive that it even dictated the emotional quality of a space, with specific proportions intended to evoke feelings of peace, power, or grandeur. Why was this modular precision so vital? It was about more than construction efficiency. It embedded a cosmic hierarchy directly into the stone. The smallest brick was a fraction of the module. The module defined the pillars defined the hall, and the hall culminated in the sacred sanctuary. This was a physical representation of the universe itself, where every element, from the smallest particle to the grandest celestial body, exists in a precise, interlocking relationship. The temple became a model of a perfectly ordered reality, a place where human society, the natural world, and the divine cosmos were all united under one unshakable mathematical law. The silent geometry of these temples was never meant to be silent at all. Beyond the visual symphony of symmetry and number, ancient architects engineered a hidden layer of mathematical wonder meant not for the eye but for the ear. They manipulated sound itself, using precise calculations to make their stone structures sing, whisper, and echo with the voices of the gods. This is the mathematics of acoustic engineering, a secret code written not in stone but in vibration. Consider the Great Pyramid of Kukulkan at Chichen Itza. When you stand at its base and clap your hands, the sound does not simply bounce back as a flat echo. It returns transformed as a series of sharp, chirping notes that uncannily mimic the call of the sacred Quetzal bird. This was no happy accident of construction. Researchers have determined this auditory illusion is created by the precise mathematical relationship between the steps of the grand staircase. The width and height of each step are so carefully proportioned that the sound waves from a clap reflect off them not in one single return, but in a rapid, cascading sequence. Each step acts like the teeth of a comb, filtering the sound and breaking it into distinct frequencies that merge to create that iconic chirping echo. This required a profound, if intuitive, grasp of how sound waves behave, of timing, and of harmonic intervals. The result is a structure that does not just represent a serpent god descending from the heavens, but one that literally speaks with the voice of the sacred natural world, a stunning fusion of zoology, mythology, and mathematics. This auditory genius was not confined to the Americas. In certain ancient Hindu temples of southern India, you can find halls filled with intricately carved musical pillars. These are not solid blocks of stone, but complex clusters of slender columns, each one tuned like a musical instrument. When struck gently, they produce clear, distinct musical notes. Even more astonishingly, these pillars are often arranged in specific sequences that correspond to the ragas, the traditional melodic frameworks of Indian classical music. Each raga is more than a tune. It is a complex emotional and spiritual landscape, believed to be capable of evoking specific feelings, healing ailments, or even influencing the seasons. To craft a stone pillar that rings with a specific, predetermined pitch is an incredible feat of material science and acoustic calculation. The builders had to understand the relationship between the pillar's dimensions, the density of the stone, and the resonant frequency it would produce when vibrated. They were, in effect, building a permanent stone orchestra, turning the very architecture into a divine instrument. Why go to such extraordinary lengths? The answer lies in a holistic vision of worship. For these cultures, the spiritual experience was not meant to be solely visual or intellectual. It was a full-body, multi-sensory immersion. By weaving precise mathematical ratios into the acoustic fabric of the temple, the architects created an environment where the architecture itself participated in the ritual. The echo of a chant, the ring of a struck pillar, the way a specific corner amplified a priest's whisper, all these were carefully calibrated effects. They used the invisible mathematics of sound waves to build an atmosphere of awe. to blur the line between the human voice and the voice of the divine, making it seem as if the temple itself was alive and responding to the presence of the faithful. This was mathematics in its most poetic form, not just measuring the world, but composing with it, creating sacred spaces that resonated with a harmony you could not only see, but hear and feel deep within your bones. These silent geometric proofs are etched into the very foundations of the world's oldest cities. The Great Bath of Mohenjo-Daro, a masterpiece of the Indus Valley civilization, is a perfect rectangle of staggering precision. Its corners form near-perfect right angles, and its sides run parallel with an accuracy that would satisfy a modern engineer. This was not achieved by guesswork. The builders possessed a profound, practical understanding of the principles later formalized by Euclid, such as the methods for ensuring perpendicularity and calculating area. They were executing geometric proofs on a massive scale, using bricks and mortar instead of pen and parchment. A similar story unfolds along the Street of the Dead in the ancient metropolis of Teotihuacan. This vast ceremonial avenue and the towering pyramids that flank it are aligned with such geometric rigor that the entire city feels like a colossal diagram. The structures exhibit precise right angles, consistent orientations, and parallel lines stretching for miles. This required sophisticated surveying techniques, a form of applied geometry that allowed the builders to translate abstract principles into a physical, urban reality. How did they achieve this without the formal theorems we learn in school today? They likely discovered these truths through hands-on, generational practice. The act of repeatedly laying out foundations with ropes and stakes, of ensuring a platform was perfectly level and a wall was perfectly straight, would have revealed the constant, unchanging laws of geometry. A knotted rope stretched into a 3-4-5 triangle will always create a right angle, a principle understood intuitively long before it was named after Pythagoras. These city layouts were, in effect, their textbooks. The perfect rectangle of the Great Bath was a permanent, communal demonstration of area and perpendicularity. The grand alignment of Teotihuacan was a civic lesson in parallelism and angles. This knowledge was both practical and profoundly sacred. By building their cities and temples according to these immutable geometric laws, they were grounding their society in a form of divine certainty. The mathematical truth of a right angle was as eternal and reliable as the gods themselves, a tangible piece of cosmic order made manifest in their everyday world. This reverence for geometric certainty suggests that for these ancient cultures, mathematics was not just a tool for building, but the very language in which a stable and harmonious universe was written. This fusion of geometry and mythology transformed stone and mortar into a living storybook. In the vast temple complexes of ancient Egypt, the central axis was rarely just a line on an architect's plan. It was a physical representation of a god's celestial journey, a path the sun god Ra would travel each day from birth to death and rebirth. The temple layout allowed a priest to ritually walk the same route as the deity, moving from the bright, open courtyard into the progressively darker and more sacred inner chambers, enacting the myth with every step. But the story was not only told through alignment, it was encoded in the very numbers of the architecture. Consider the myth of Osiris, the god of the afterlife, who was murdered and dismembered into 14 pieces by his brother Set. His wife, Isis, tirelessly gathered all the fragments to restore him to life. In temples dedicated to Osiris, you will often find that key chambers, altars, or processional stations number 14. This was not a random count. It was a direct architectural invocation of the myth, ensuring that the sacred space itself resonated with the story of death and resurrection. Worshippers were not merely hearing the tale, they were surrounded by its mathematical echo, walking through a numerical reenactment of divine reassembly. This same principle appears far to the north, etched into the wood of Norwegian stave churches. Their unique, tiered structures with multiple roofs rising to a central peak are a stunning geometric representation of Yggdrasil, the immense world tree from Norse mythology. In the myth, Yggdrasil's roots and branches connect the 9 different realms of existence, from the land of the gods to the underworld. The architecture of the stave church mirrors this cosmic geography. The central, massive post or stave symbolizes the tree's trunk, while the ascending layers of the roof and the intricate carvings of serpents and beasts depict the connected worlds. The entire building becomes a 3-dimensional map of the Norse cosmos, a geometric model of a mythological concept. Why merge math and myth so inseparably? Because numbers gave the stories permanence and structure. An abstract belief is fragile, but when that belief is built into the angles of a roof and the count of its pillars, it becomes as solid and enduring as the temple itself. Mathematics provided the immutable framework upon which the fluid, powerful narratives of culture could be securely hung, generation after generation. The temple was a machine for memory, using the universal language of geometry to preserve a culture's most sacred truths in a form that could outlast empires and withstand the erosion of time. Of course, such precise patterns invite a fundamental question. Are we witnessing a lost global science, or are we simply projecting our own mathematical order onto the past? Skeptics present a compelling counter-argument. They suggest that what we call codes are often just the natural byproducts of practical construction. If you repeatedly build structures with ropes and stakes to create right angles, you will inevitably stumble upon Pythagorean triples. If you favor rectangles that look balanced and stable, you will naturally gravitate toward proportions close to the golden ratio. It becomes a simple matter of statistics. With thousands of ancient temples spread across the globe, built over millennia, is it really so surprising that a handful of them exhibit alignments with pi or Fibonacci sequences purely by random chance? Perhaps we are the ones connecting dots that were never meant to be connected, seeing a grand design in what was, for the builders, simply a matter of functional and aesthetic intuition. The human brain is wired to find patterns even when none exist. Yet, proponents of the deliberate design theory push back with equal force. They ask us to consider the sheer complexity and consistency of these encodings. It is one thing for a single temple to align with the solstice sun, a feat achievable through generations of observation. It is another matter entirely for an entire complex like Angkor to function as a precise calendar for solar, lunar, and planetary cycles simultaneously. They point to the specific, non-intuitive numbers. The Maya did not need a pyramid with 365 steps to mark the year. They could have built one with 360, a much simpler number. The choice of a prime number of bricks in a Vedic altar was a specific, text-mandated requirement, not a random outcome of construction. The acoustic chirp of El Castillo, a result of mathematically precise step proportions, serves no structural purpose. It exists purely as an auditory symbol. This level of layered, non-utilitarian encoding, repeated across continents, suggests a conscious intent to speak in a numerical language. The debate ultimately forces us to confront our own assumptions about ancient history. Were our ancestors merely practical problem solvers, or were they philosopher-mathematicians who saw the universe as a web of sacred geometry waiting to be mirrored on Earth? The archaeological record offers no smoking gun, no ancient textbook titled The Rules of Sacred Mathematics. We are left with the stones themselves, and they tell a tantalizingly ambiguous story. Perhaps the truth lies not in choosing one side over the other, but in embracing the mystery. The enduring power of these temples may not come from a definitive answer, but from their relentless ability to provoke the question. They stand as permanent riddles, challenging us to reconsider the depth of human ingenuity and the possibility that an entire dimension of their knowledge was written not on papyrus or parchment, but in the silent, enduring language of stone and sky. The silent stones are finally beginning to speak, their secrets unlocked not by new theories but by new eyes. A technological revolution is sweeping through archaeology, armed with tools that see through jungle canopies and measure with microscopic precision. Ground-penetrating radar and LIDAR, which stands for light detection and ranging, are now scanning ancient sites, revealing hidden geometries we could never have seen from the ground. In the dense jungle surrounding Angkor, LIDAR pulses from aircraft have stripped away the vegetation, exposing a vast urban landscape beneath. The scans revealed something astonishing: a previously invisible grid of geometric roadways and canals that extended far beyond the central temple, showing the entire city was planned as a single, massive mathematical diagram. This was not an organic settlement, it was a premeditated geometric blueprint on a colossal scale. Similarly, sophisticated software analyzing the Parthenon has detected that its famous straight lines are an optical illusion. The platform curves slightly upward in the center, and the columns lean infinitesimally inward. These subtle corrections, invisible to the naked eye, were deliberate mathematical choices to counteract the way the human eye perceives perspective, ensuring the entire structure appeared perfectly straight and harmonious from a distance. The architects were not just building with stone, they were building with an understanding of human perception, using mathematics to engineer a perfect visual experience. These tools do more than confirm old suspicions, they open entirely new chapters. Computational software can now run complex astronomical simulations, rewinding the sky thousands of years to show exactly how a temple aligned with a star constellation on the day of its dedication, a celestial event we can now witness again on a computer screen. This flood of hard data is transforming speculation into substantiated fact, providing undeniable proof that these patterns are intentional. We are no longer just interpreting the past, we are measuring its mind. Every new scan, every pixel of data, brings us closer to hearing the full conversation these ancient mathematicians were having with the universe. A dialogue written in a language of perfect angles, sacred ratios, and celestial alignments that we are only now learning to read. This unified world fundamentally reshapes our understanding of history itself. Our modern narrative often portrays human progress as a straight line, a steady climb from primitive superstition to enlightened science. Yet these temples stand as stark, magnificent contradictions to that simple story. They represent not primitive steps on a ladder, but towering peaks of integrated knowledge that were somehow scaled and then forgotten. Entire civilizations achieved a synthesis of art, science, and spirit that we, in our age of specialization, struggle to even comprehend. This forces a humbling question: is progress truly linear, or does it move in cycles of discovery, loss, and rediscovery? The mathematical codes suggest that profound understanding can be attained, only to fade from collective memory, waiting to be unearthed once more. This challenges the very core of our historical identity, implying that our current technological age is not the pinnacle of human achievement, but merely one expression of a timeless quest for order. The real mystery is not just how they built these structures, but why this holistic vision of reality was ever lost. Perhaps in dividing our world into separate disciplines, we fractured a once complete picture of existence. These ancient builders did not see a conflict between measuring the stars and praying to the gods for them. It was the same sacred act. The alignment of a temple was both a scientific calculation and a devotional prayer, a single gesture that honored the cosmos as a rational, spiritual whole. This challenges the modern rift between the rational and the mystical, suggesting that our ancestors saw mathematics not as a cold tool for manipulation, but as a warm, living language spoken by the universe itself. To them, numbers were the vocabulary of creation, and geometry was the syntax that held the stars in place and made the seeds grow. By encoding this language into their temples, they were building libraries of cosmic law, asserting that the path to the divine was through understanding the beautiful, intelligible rules of nature. What does this mean for us today? These stone monuments are more than archaeological relics. They are philosophical provocations. They remind us that the human desire to find meaning in the cosmos, to build structures that reflect our understanding of universal principles, is a constant thread woven through time. Our drive to encode meaning into our surroundings, whether with stone blocks or lines of code, is a fundamental aspect of what it means to be human and to build a culture. These temples stand as eternal witnesses to a quest that predates our modern categories, a quest to not just live in the universe, but to understand its music and build our homes in harmony with its timeless mathematical song. These distinct approaches to sacred mathematics reveal a fascinating cultural dialogue between East and West. In ancient Greece and Rome, the guiding principle was a profound faith in human reason. Their temples were monuments to a cosmos they believed was fundamentally logical and knowable. The perfect symmetry of the Parthenon, its clean lines and rational proportions, was a declaration that the human mind, through mathematics, could comprehend and even replicate the divine order. This was a universe built on elegant, understandable laws, and the temple was its ultimate geometric proof, a space where humanity met the gods on the grounds of shared intellect. The divine was not a mystery to be lost in, but a beautiful equation to be solved. This worldview celebrated clarity, balance, and the power of the individual mind to perceive cosmic truth. Contrast this with the sacred landscapes of the East. In the vast temple complexes of Angkor, built by the Khmer Empire, the geometry feels alive and burgeoning. Instead of stark, isolated structures, the design is often fractal and interconnected, with towers repeating at different scales, galleries winding like roots, and bas-reliefs so dense they mimic the tangled complexity of the jungle itself. This was not an attempt to impose a man-made order upon nature, but to emulate its organic, self-similar patterns. The temple was a microcosm of a living, breathing universe where every part contained the essence of the whole. This reflects a philosophical core centered on interconnection, where the divine permeates every leaf and stone, and the path to enlightenment involves recognizing this intricate, endless web of relationships. The mathematical goal was not to frame a single, perfect moment of rational clarity, but to create an immersive environment that guided the soul through endless layers of cosmic reality. This divergence extends to their very conception of space. A Greek temple often stands proudly alone on a hill, a singular geometric object against the sky, emphasizing humanity's distinct place within the cosmos. A sprawling Hindu temple complex, however, pulls you inward through a series of gateways and courtyards that gradually narrow your focus from the external world to the inner sanctum. The mathematics of its layout is a map for a spiritual journey, a guided progression from the profane to the profoundly sacred. So why did these paths diverge so beautifully? The answer lies in their unique philosophical environments. The West's emphasis on logic and individualism found its perfect expression in the clear, demonstrable truth of a right angle. The East's focus on unity, cycles of rebirth, and the illusion of separateness found its voice in recursive patterns and organic forms that dissolved boundaries. Yet, for all their differences, both traditions were answering the same fundamental call. They were using the universal language of mathematics to build bridges between the human and the holy, crafting sacred spaces that were, in their own ways, perfect models of their understanding of the universe. One saw divinity in a flawless line, the other in an endless spiral, but both were writing their deepest truths in the same silent, numerical tongue. This ancient mathematical legacy did not vanish with the stones. It merely went dormant, waiting to be rediscovered by minds ready to hear its echoes. During the Renaissance, architects like Filippo Brunelleschi stood before the ruins of ancient Rome not as tourists, but as detectives. He meticulously measured the proportions of classical temples and amphitheaters, recovering the lost language of harmonic ratios and geometric systems. This was not simple imitation, it was the rebirth of an idea that the universe was mathematically ordered and that human design should reflect this cosmic logic. Brunelleschi's own masterpiece, the immense dome of the Florence Cathedral, stands as a testament to this recovered knowledge, a feat of engineering made possible by applying ancient principles of geometry and proportion. This revival of classical mathematics did more than create beautiful buildings. It helped ignite the scientific revolution, fostering a worldview where the natural world could be understood through measurement and number. Centuries later, the influence continued. In the 1800s, astronomers struggling to understand the precise length of the solar year turned to an unexpected source: ancient temple alignments. By studying how Egyptian temples marked solstices and Mayan structures tracked Venus, they could cross-check and refine their own celestial calculations. These stone calendars provided a long-term data set, a record of celestial mechanics written in architecture that helped confirm and refine modern astronomical models. The past was actively correcting the present. Today, this legacy is more alive than ever in fields like archaeoastronomy, where scientists use software to simulate ancient skies and decode the astronomical purpose of monuments. But the impact goes even further. Researchers in digital heritage now use three-dimensional scanning and LIDAR data from ancient sites to develop sophisticated new algorithms for pattern recognition. The unique geometric challenges posed by a Khmer temple's fractal towers or a Gothic cathedral's complex vaulting push computer scientists to create better tools for spatial analysis and three-dimensional modeling. The mathematical problems first solved by ancient stonemasons are now inspiring solutions at the cutting edge of computer science. This ongoing conversation proves that the knowledge locked within these temples is not a closed book. It is a living resource, a spring of inspiration that continues to feed modern innovation. When we study these ancient codes, we are not merely digging up relics. We are honoring a continuous tradition of human inquiry, linking the mind of a Mayan calendar priest to that of a modern software engineer in a single, unbroken quest to read the universe. Behind every perfect alignment and encoded ratio stood a master of numbers, a human mind capable of translating cosmic order into a builder's blueprint. These were the priest mathematicians, the scribe geometers, whose specialized knowledge was as crucial to the temple as the stone itself. In ancient Egypt, this role was filled by the harpodonapti, the rope stretchers. These were not simple laborers, but a respected priestly class who used meticulously knotted cords to lay out the sacred foundations. By stretching a rope with 12 equally spaced knots into a triangle with sides of 3, 4, and 5 units, they could create a perfect right angle every single time. This elegant, practical application of what we now call the Pythagorean theorem ensured that every corner of a pyramid or temple was squared with the universe. Far to the east, in the Mesopotamian city-states, temple administrators wielded a different mathematical tool, a base 60 system. This ancient numbering scheme, which gives us our 60-second minute and 60-minute hour, was used to calculate everything from the volume of bricks needed for a ziggurat to the wages of the thousands of workers. Their detailed cuneiform tablets were the project manifests of their day, blending complex arithmetic with the sacred duty of raising a home for the gods. These experts were more than just technicians, they were guardians of a sacred trust. Their mathematical methods were often closely guarded secrets, passed down within families or initiated priesthoods. This knowledge was considered a form of divine power, a way to literally shape the earthly realm to mirror the heavens. It was a potent blend of the intensely practical and the deeply esoteric, where knowing how to calculate an area was as much a spiritual discipline as it was an engineering one. This hands-on role required immense coordination. Imagine the logistical feat of directing thousands of workers to quarry, transport, and raise multi-ton blocks, all while maintaining mathematical precision down to a fraction of an inch. The master builder had to be an architect, an astronomer, a project manager, and a priest all at once. Their work was a monumental act of faith, not just in their gods, but in the unwavering truth of mathematics itself. By acknowledging these anonymous mathematicians, we shift our perspective from the silent stones to the vibrant, intelligent humanity behind them. We see the calloused hands that held the knotted ropes, the keen eyes that tracked the stars, and the devoted minds that believed they could build heaven on earth. Their legacy is not merely in the structures that survived, but in the very idea that human intelligence, when dedicated to a sacred purpose, can create wonders capable of speaking across millennia. Yet this powerful drive to decode the past carries a profound responsibility. As we uncover these mathematical patterns, we must tread carefully, balancing our scientific curiosity with deep cultural respect. A modern fascination with sacred geometry, for instance, can sometimes lead to misinterpretation. It is tempting to project our own numerological beliefs onto these ancient stones, overlaying their original intent with contemporary spiritual ideas that would be entirely foreign to the builders. Imagine telling the architect of a Maya pyramid that his calendrical calculations were actually about channeling cosmic energy in a way he never conceived. This strips the structure of its authentic historical voice, turning a rich cultural artifact into a blank screen for our own projections. The true meaning of these codes is found not by imposing our views, but by listening to the culture's own story. This is where indigenous knowledge becomes invaluable. The living traditions of communities connected to these sites, passed down through generations, offer insights that no satellite image or laser scan can provide. They hold the cultural context, the mythological narratives, and the spiritual purpose that give the numbers their true significance. An alignment is not just a line to a star, it is a pathway for a specific prayer, a connection to a particular ancestor. This kind of deep, contextual understanding requires collaboration and humility. We must also remember that for many people around the world, these are not abandoned ruins but active, living temples. They are places of worship, pilgrimage, and community ceremony. To treat them solely as intellectual puzzles to be solved is to disregard their ongoing sacred role. The ethical approach is to see them as both, to honor the devotional practices that happen there today while carefully studying the mathematical genius of their construction. This balance is not a limitation on discovery, but its greatest enhancement. It ensures that our quest for knowledge does not come at the cost of cultural erasure or disrespect. By proceeding with this mindful approach, we do more than just solve an ancient mystery. We engage in a meaningful dialogue with the past, one that honors the spiritual intentions behind the mathematical brilliance and ensures these stone wonders are understood as the profound cultural treasures they truly are. Our journey through these mathematical codes reveals a breathtaking legacy of human ingenuity, a story written not in ink but in stone and sky. From the golden ratio resonating through Greek temples to the celestial calendars of Angkor, these structures encode a profound understanding of mathematics, astronomy, and philosophy that we are only now beginning to fully measure. They stand as magnificent challenges to our linear view of history, forcing us to recognize that entire civilizations achieved a synthesis of knowledge that rivals, and in some ways surpasses, our own fragmented expertise. We are not discovering primitive minds, but pure intellects who saw the cosmos as an interconnected whole. As ground-penetrating radar and LIDAR scan these ancient sites, we are uncovering hidden city grids and subtle optical corrections we never knew existed. Each new technological lens reveals another layer of their intent, promising that more secrets will emerge from the Earth, deepening our awe and connection to these timeless wonders. Remember, these temples are not mere relics of a forgotten past. They are permanent invitations, asking us to ponder the universal language of mathematics that binds humanity across ages and cultures. They whisper that our own search for order and meaning is part of a conversation that began millennia ago. If this exploration into history's greatest mysteries has sparked your curiosity, we would love to hear your thoughts in the comments.